Welcome to Behind the Biz, conversations with artists and entertainment. I'm your host, Megan Mason. Please subscribe here on YouTube and don't forget to follow us on Instagram. Now, on to the show. Hello!
How are you?
I'm good. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Behind the Biz. I would like to introduce you today to my fellow colleague in the wig and entertainment land, Richard Krammes, who's coming to us from Denver. How are you?
I'm good. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Yay. January, what are we on, the 3rd?
Yeah, already.
This year's going to fly by. I want to tell people
Totally.
a little bit about your proper introduction, especially for those listening on the podcast. Richard has over 30 years in the industry. He is a master barber, which I think is very cool. He is a wig maker, wig designer. He does hair. He is an educator and still works in production as well. His full bio is available on the description, and bonus, I'm going to post some very cool photos of the wigs in the making for Hedda Gabler that he was working on at Denver University, correct?
Yes.
They're beautiful, and he was kind enough to send over the footage, so I want to share that so people can see, especially the ladder, the updo that you have, and then it's a ladder piece, Ladder, if you're just listening, that turned out so gorgeous. Human hair, synthetic?
It was a blend. It was a blend. You know, we have to adapt to budgets, as we know, from venue to venue. We were trying to go with something a little more realistic. They didn't want a lace line on her. It's a really adaptable space that they have in the Byron Theater at Newman Center down at DU. But since they were going to do some filming, she's like, I really don't want a lace line on her. Can we make a piece? So we darkened her down and darkened her to the hair that was selected, and it was a blended weft. And of course, we know that when we work with hair that is blended or synthetic, that you will style it differently. You will steam the life out of it to get it to bend, and all those things that come into play. But we love the fact that we were able to incorporate some of her hair into it and have this piece to put on. And
it looked beautiful.
Fun. Thank you. It was great fun to to be able to put something up there in the middle of a pandemic and hope and pray that we would get to achieve something even on a smaller scale with it, which we were able to. So
oh yeah, I mean, when you told me that you guys were working on a show, I was so excited for you because I miss live theater so much, and all of the protocols were in place, and wishing and hoping. I know they had to pause that production. We were talking a little bit before that you think that they were able to finish filming it. Obviously, it wasn't for a live audience, but
right. It was closed to the students and all of the production team and some educators only for photos and archival. And then literally on the quote opening night, they came into the green room and dressing rooms and wig and makeup room and said, we've had a student test positive and we have to shut this down. The numbers had been going up in Colorado, and so we took a pause. Luckily, everything was done. Photos had happened. And then they said, okay, we're gonna come back and we're going to film it, but it's strictly going to be all run by the DU staff and students. So anybody who was contracted, we had to. I haven't seen the film portion of it yet, but I'll work my magic to get my copy of that. They've been very good to me, so it's a great place to be able to go and do some work, and some great people working down there, formerly from Denver Center for the Performing Arts, where I used to work for a number of years. Some people were just on this project, and then there's some people that are, working down there full time, teaching. And just a really great theater program down there, and a really beautiful facility.
Oh, I love that. I can't wait I hope that you will share with me the video whenever it comes to fruition.
I can't wait to see it.
Now, Denver is not where you were born and raised. You started out in hair. Well, you were born and raised in Baltimore, but then that's where you got your feet wet in the hair industry.
Oh yeah. I went to barber school first.
I love that, because barbering, I think, is almost a lost art as well. And so I just love that. I just want you to know that.
And in those days, because that was a long time ago, but in those days, you did your initial training, and then you tested and got a journeyman's license, and you had to work for 18 months under a master barber, and then go and take your master barber license. So there was the whole straight razor shave. There were these 17 different strokes to the face, and the whole face prep, and all the clipper work, and the shear over comb. I mean, and there was the standard, thing that they wanted you to do, but you had to do it very well. And there's also a written test. But everything was live on a live model then. Everything was. So you had to really practice and have it down, or you were not going to get that license. And I worked in barbershops for a little while, and then transitioned into salons that were starting to, to merge both men and women together. Originally, they called it unisex. That is such an old term, but that's what they called it. And you had women in your chair, and you were cutting women's hair, which from the hairstyling perspective, the approaches are definitely different. And then I went back to school and went through a cosmetology program to learn more about women's hairstyling and all of the color work and chemical work that we weren't doing in men's hair then. Men's hair now is so freaking cool. These barbershops that are popping up all over the place. And they're doing work that I wished we were doing back in the 80s. In the 80s, you got to think about men's hair. We had mullets, and we had, spikier looks, things that were kind of geometric looking somewhat.
There was awesome hair.
Yeah, there was awesome hair, especially women's. But like all of the high and tight fading they're doing now. And we didn't have as much facial hair in the 80s, but they got very groomed facial. Even the guys with the long lumberjack beards, it's very groomed. And the shave shops came back.
Yeah.
After we didn't do all this shaving in the 80s. We really didn't. Some clipper work, but not shaving with blades. And that came back. And they've got a pool table in them, and there's one just up for me in Loveland that is both a barber shop and a whiskey distillery. I'm not kidding.
See, there's a place here, that's called like Tune Up or something, and it's for men to go and get their hair done, but also they do nail services for men, so they don't feel like they're going, but they serve here.
Oh yes.
And what a great idea, because I mean, let's be honest, guys should get pedicures too.
Yeah.
Maybe more than girls.
Yeah, we tend to ignore our feet and our hands. But then the summertime comes.
Yeah, my dad just got his first pedicure like a month ago. We were like, go at like 8 o'clock in the morning and wear a mask and all this stuff. And he came home and he was like, Megan, that was like the most amazing thing. It's like, yeah, they're awesome. But it is true, all of these salons that are open and catering to men and to get them in there. What an interesting concept as a barber and stylist.
Totally. The men's grooming business has it's just exploded, and it's very cool because the work options are much bigger now than what they were. I mean, in Little Loveland, Colorado, just north of me, on the 4th Street there, which is like part of the old downtown section that they've restored. There's like 5 or 6 barbershops and a couple of hair salons just in a 2-block radius there. We were up, my wife and I were up there just very recently, and I was like, oh my God. Yeah. So it's happening all over.
It's become cool again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Very cool.
How did you go from, so you were in Baltimore and then you went and worked in DC for a while, which I love DC.
Yeah.
I'm very overdue for a trip there. But then you always wanted to be in the West.
Yeah. Yeah. East Coast. It's like I was born and raised there, but it was never my groove. I am thankful that I am the son of 2 educators, public school educators. And in the 60s and 70s, it was very cheap to pack up the car and go live on the road during the summer. So we did that. And my folks were really big about taking my sister and I to see all these, historic places in the United States, Canada, Mexico, U.S. Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico, all the national monuments, the national parks. And we a lot of it, we did camping. Most of it was camping because it was affordable for a family of 4 to do that, plus the dog, And I'm so thankful. But when we came to the West, it was like this whole other world. I mean, it was like an ocean of land, this whole other world. And once my sister and I saw it, I was like, I'm going to live here. I don't know when but I'm going to live here, somewhere out here, when I'm old enough to do so. And I did start leaving and returning. There was a period of time between 18 and 24 where I was leaving and returning, Colorado, Montana, and then finally came back here. And the last time I left, like I was saying earlier, I call it the year I ran away from home, but I was 24 and I moved here. And then a year later, I met my wife. And not long after that, we were married and then became parents and settled my career here, which it's been great.
Isn't that crazy? You just know.
Yeah. Yeah. There's something called astral cartography, which it's like astrology, but it has to do where your lineup is in landmass areas around the world. And so there are certain places you're meant to go in life and meant to be in life for various reasons. And this definitely was the place I was supposed to be.
That is super fascinating.
Yeah.
I'm going to look that up because I feel like probably similar to the feeling you had when I moved to Los Angeles. I was just turned 22 to go to the Westmore Academy there and to do makeup for film and television. And I remember driving with my dad. We got into California and we went near this gas station. Like I could tell you exactly what it looks like right now. It was a gas station and like a big giant oleander. And I just remember having such a sense of peace and like, oh, I'm back home. I've never been there. I mean, I visited once, you know, and the whole time I lived there, which was only about 5.5 years, despite it being hard and poor and all of these things, it still feels like my second home, even though I was in Vegas for longer. But yeah, that's super interesting. I want to look into astral cartography.
Yeah. Yeah.
Huh.
It's pretty fascinating.
Yeah, there's something about that. And when you kind of know you're on the right path, you know, how are you staying inspired during this time? I mean, you definitely have had a technical curveball this year.
Yes. Teaching students hairstyling online, high school students hairstyling online.
How's that going?
You know, there's the pro to it that technology is their world. It is their world.
True.
So they're able to help me with things that I might struggle with. how do I do da da? And they'll just tell me because they already know how to do it. It's like, the back of their hand. They just do it. So there've been those things that have been cool. But then there's certain skills where it's like, I need to be right behind you to see this, and I can't. I've got a screen, and we can do what we can do with a screen, and individual snapshots that they can send me, which they're having to do for all of the practical. But there's that, and then it's that person-to-person element, the personal care services where the personal needs to be, and I can't recreate that world for them in one-dimensional technology. It's just not going to happen. So we're doing it though. We're making it happen, and the year has been progressing along. We weren't able to open the salon. School district said nope. Because we're a public school, so we have different guidelines to follow for that.
Right.
So that's been unfortunate. But in a previous year, I was able to order ample supply of mannequins. So we have heads to work on, and they've got family members and friends at home, and some of them have been taking that step to move beyond. And I've been encouraging it with all the parents. The next phase that happens over the next couple of months is teaching chemicals online. Perming, relaxing, hair color, all of that. So I sent out a letter today, including all of the parents in it, along with the students, to let them know that they need a space for chemicals to happen.
Yeah, because some parent is gonna be very surprised by that solution.
Yeah, because there's gonna be odors and there's gonna be mess, and I'm letting them know now that they need to create a space for that to happen. So I'm ready to fly on it. We have chemical kits that have to go out and pick up dates for things throughout the year. I mean, it's happening, and I'm thankful that it's happening. Because in the beginning we were all, just kind of scrambling with, how are we going to do what we do, in a virtual world? Because we didn't start out having kids in there. We were online, and then we got to have partial live, and then the numbers went up. So we went back to live, and we'll be live until the week of the 19th. And then we're going back to 4 days live, an AM class, PM class, because it's a 2-year program that I teach, and the Mondays will still be an online thing.
This is really awesome that this is a program that's in a public school that's so in depth.
Boulder Tech in Boulder, Colorado has often been referred to as Boulder's best kept secret. I don't want it to be a secret. I want everyone to know that our cosmetology department, which has been in business since 1967, is still doing the biz in Boulder County. It is an awesome program. I feel extremely fortunate to be working with an incredible staff. Jennifer Ball as esthetician, Angeline Espinoza teaching our nail class. They're both incredible educators. I teach the hairstyling program. It's a 2 years. Theirs each is a 1 year, pending when the students can start. And if they get ahead on their high school credits, they might be able to pass through all 3 programs and get the full cosmetology. We hope someday to add a barber program. Would love it. But they have auto and collision, they have welding, they have construction training, they have forensics and crime scene investigation. Yes, totally. They have an anatomical body. She's anatomically correct cadaver. She's not real, but she looks real. And they keep her in this thing with all this liquid. It's very cool. They have that going on. It's a really unique tech school to be working in. And kids can go to school there all day for their academic if they don't want to be in a regular high school situation. So we offer that as well on the Arapaho side. But
that is so cool.
yeah, and I just, things fall into life the way they're meant to be. And I came into that position. I had been teaching at a school in Denver in the post-secondary world, which is where a lot of us went to. Cosmetology and hairstyling school was in the post-secondary private occupational schools. And our daughter was considering, when she was in high school at the time, because I've been there 9 years now, she was considering doing a program there. And we happened to run into, at the time, principal of the school. And she said, so what do you do? And as soon as I told her, she's like, oh my God, we need to talk because somebody is retiring. And it was one of those things where there's only ever been 3 staff. And there's never a vacancy unless somebody retires or leaves or passes away. And it was just one of those situations where, the paths crossed and it was meant to be. And from teaching many years in post-secondary technical education and now 9 years in public education, I got to tell you, I love this. I love being able to teach in a public school. The opportunities and the connections that I've been able to make and the bridges that I've been able to merge, I was not able to do in the post-secondary private occupational world, because many of those schools, they run the private occupational schools, and I don't want to knock them because I did work in some very good ones. They work in a world where it has a lot to do with dollars and cents first, and then we can look at all the other parts.
Yeah.
And in the public sector, it's education all the way, baby. And that's what I love. I love it. And we're thankful that we get the budgets we get and we learn to make them work. It's like a one-man show. We got to do everything. But
the theater.
It's just like that. So learning to recycle stuff, all the things we do in production, a lot of it relates to what I do in public education. But the fact that students pay the kit rental fee, and that's all they pay. It's all funded by taxpayer money, and we are grateful for that.
I feel like that's kind of not what I'm running. I probably should be a better business person, because all of the schools, it is all about the money and not necessarily, not all of them, like you said, but
right.
The education and what you're turning out is not necessarily as important. Where I'm coming here from the school, kind of in the same mindset that you are, and that it's so important to foster talent and potential and help people on their path. And especially now in a pandemic, that doesn't always translate to thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars.
Right.
So it's working with people and figuring out how to make those next artists have the opportunities to do what we do.
Exactly.
And do it in a manner that maintains the integrity and respect of the art that it deserves.
Exactly.
So it's such a cool school that I would totally take forensics.
Yeah. I mean, the educators are all, career professionals. They've been in it for years, and some like me are still working in it. Others are career educators, in their field. Some have been teaching there a long time. Some are, mid-stage. We have very great directorship. Arlie Huffman, our director, we are so thankful for him for steering Boulder Tech and helming it in the right directions. And it's a good Boulder Valley School District. It's a good school district. So I get on my knees and I say thank you for all the things that have come. With all the things we do, which would include like teaching and production work, wigs and makeup for the production work as well, we can't take it with us. We can't take it with us when we go. We have to instill it into the next wave of all the young artists that want to break out and go into, you know, various parts of our industry, hairstyling, wig making, makeup. We just can't, we cannot take it with us. They have to be inspired, they have to be motivated, and we have to deliver the skill set. Because if they don't have the skill set, the art and craft won't survive, and the quality will go down. We know, we know from watching different productions, whether it's television or film or even stage, when you see, you know, things go out there and you're like, oh my, you know, that could have been so much better. And then the ones that we see are like, oh my God, that is brilliant. So
the
we
ones
have to
that
keep
you
delivering.
see and you're like, I am a hack. When you watch like really gorgeous ones, and you're like, what am I doing over here? Look at that. Like, wow.
Yes. Which inspires us to want to be better at what we do, to continue doing the professional development workshops and continuing to educate ourselves to be better at our game. That's always been my thing, and I go every year to something, and I bring it directly back, of course, to the classroom, because again, you know, can't take it with us. We've got to inspire the young, creative minds, and the old ones too.
It's so important to stay inspired, and I think especially right now, hence doing this interview, to inspire people. But looking back on your youth and stuff, what was it like? Did you always know you wanted to do hair and stuff in some way, or, you know, did you want to be a rock star when you were 12? Like, what did young Richard want to do? How did you get here, Richard?
Well, I know that I always liked movies. And my dad was a big movie fan. I mean, he grew up during the Depression, and everybody went to the movies. You know, before TV, it was like radio or movies, and everybody went to the movies. And so I grew up watching a lot of great old films when they used to have them on regular TV, before cable, regular TV, and watched all these great old, and I did always love that. And of course, my folks took us to the movies, and they took us to see, you know, some live things, which was always, to be in a theater, you know, it was just this other world. It was very cool. But if you would have ever told me that I was going to be a hairstylist or a barber when I was a kid, I would have told you were nuts. I remember distinctly going, my dad was off doing some graduate school training, and my mom had my sister and I in the summer probably pulling her hair out. And there were some times when we had to go to the hairdresser with her. So I'm remembering this place that was all done in this faux kind of Louis the 16th blue shag carpet and the chandelier, you know, very, very 60s, and big bullet dryers, and ladies under there, you know, with rollers and everything. And some ladies getting like more mod with the Sassoon that was starting to come out. And my mom was one of those. But, you know, my sister and I just being so bored, you'll go sit down, you know, we just didn't want to be in there. But I had a friend who was working in the industry, and she was cutting my hair, and she said, you know, you should consider this industry. It's creative, you can make a living, and there's a lot of opportunities in it. So I thought, well, I'll give barber school a go. I'll give it a go. And when I got into it, I'm like, okay, there's something about this that I like. Men's hair at the time, though, was very limiting. It was very limiting then, not like what it is now. Yeah. So I went back to school after working a little while to get a cosmetology license to learn more about ladies' hairstyling. And I am thankful that I learned from some old school barbers and hairstylists, because they come from that time when everything was live. You weren't doing all this stuff on mannequins, and you better know it. I mean, you better know it. So they made you know it. and like learning finger waves for the first time. I'm like, what is this? I don't know, but it's really cool. I'm making a mess. I don't care, but I'm loving this, you know, and all that hand setting, which is an art. The millennial kids, it's so far removed from their mindset of hairstyling. So I do have them go through a foundation of all that hand setting, that art of hand setting. It's just such a valuable skill.
Mm-hmm.
And in 2021, bigger hair is coming back.
Oh,
So
thank
that's
God.
going to require them to get used to putting volume in the hair and not all this flat ironing. They don't even call it a flat iron, they call it a straightener. They're just flat ironing all this hair. Everything flat, flat, flat. No, it's going to get big again. So we're gonna go back to creating that bigness. But getting into ladies' hair and then working in salons where we had, you know, both clientele coming in. But it wasn't until I got into teaching, and then when wigs got handed over to me,
You're like,
Always Patsy Cline was the longest cabaret show running in Denver history at the time, at the old Galleria Theatre, which is still down there in the Denver Center complex. And the wigs were handed over to me by a former student who was also a wig maker. And I was like, oh my God, I've got to learn this. I've just got to learn it. So I found the wig makers to bring me along. And I'm thankful again for all of that teaching and mentoring. Lee Barnett Dombrowski at Colorado Shakespeare Fest. Carol Chambers from the UK, and who was at the Banff Center of the Arts for a number of years. And I lived up there for a period and learned from her. Diana Benkiki, who is still at Denver Center. And then going from always Patsy Cline and some local theater productions to working on Tantalus. Talk about getting thrown in the fire. Tantalus, which was a 10.5-hour Greek trilogy of the Trojan War written by John Barton. It took him almost 20 years to write that production. And directed by Sir Peter Hall and his son Edward Hall.
yeah.
Japanese lighting designer, Greek costume and set designer, international cast. It was an incredible experience. And, you know, with masks and blood and body makeup and
Everything.
battles. And, you know, it was, and I remember then when we first got audiences and hearing over the backstage speaker, the audience applause at the end. And I was like, you know, this is so bizarre that I am doing this.
What year was that, Tantalus?
It was 2000, the fall of 2000.
Yeah, because so
They were here for a
World,
year working on that production.
So I went to University of Houston for my undergrad, and Sir Peter Hall was great friends with Dr. Sidney Berger, who was our head of the theater department and the Shakespeare program there. And so Sir Peter Hall was in Houston. Oh my God, I was in college from 98 to 2002. So he was in and out a lot during that time period. And we got to like sit in on classes that he would teach. And I remember that happening, but I couldn't remember what date. It's such a small world.
Yeah, it was a mammoth thing to pull off. At the time, one of the most expensive theater productions to have been put on stage. They could see a marathon and see the entire 10.5 hours in one day with like breakfast, lunch, and dinner, you know, in between, or they could see it in installments, in sections.
It's amazing.
And then after we closed it went on a tour of the UK.
Oh my gosh, I'll have to go back and look
really
up
well
photos and and things. Are there particular, kind of touching on Shakespeare a little bit, because I do love him.
Yes.
Are there any of his plays that you find particularly inspiring that you have worked on or that you would like to?
We did a number of Shakespeare plays at Denver Center. They were always well attended, always.
Yeah.
When 9/11 happened, we were in this conundrum of, what's going to happen here at the theater? Are people going to be spending money? People were kind of panicking. The economy was kind of getting wonky, the stock market, blah, 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 because all those things always affect it. And we did incredible Shakespeare plays during those years. They're always well attended. Measure for Measure, Hamlet, All's Well That Ends Well. Midsummer Night's Dream is my all-time fave. There's something about the magic of that play. I mean, they're all magic, but the magic of that play in a mystical forest and a king and queen of fairies and transforming people into partial animal and the love interest. It's something just very magical about it. That one's always a fave, but they had strong production value, and they continue down at Denver Center to have strong production value. So they were always a visual feast to look at. And playing around with different time periods with Shakespeare plays can also be very fun, when they tweak it a bit.
From a styling perspective, are you a designer stylist that enjoys working more with period pieces? And if so, are there certain periods that you kind of are drawn to, or do you like more mainstream modern day contemporary pieces?
I will always call it walking the tightrope between the two worlds. In years that I was out on the road with the product line Aquage as part of their artistic team, Luis Alvarez, our mentor and director, was always moving us towards the modern. You could take something from the past, but you have to learn how to make it look modern. You gotta push the boundaries of that shape. So he was always seeing the historical hairstyling aspect in me, but saying, it can't go out. Look, you got to do this with it. And it was learning to walk those two tightropes. I love period hairstyling. Again, there's such an art to it that on one hand we've lost, but on another hand, we can gain by ensuring that, again, that we're going to instill that training into the young creative minds. I am so thankful that it was taught to me, because I continue to show it to my students and try to open their minds with it. But I love vintage hairstyling. I think the 40s was a really interesting time period for women's hair, because of all of these larger conicular geometric looking shapes with volume, and of course, again, all handset. What was happening with waves that were getting softer and longer, the sleekness of it. It was kind of shifting from Art Deco to Art Modern, and everybody had pads, even men had pads. Everything was very tailored, they were.
You're a man after my own heart. I'm obsessed with it.
It's just a beautiful look. So I see when I look at those things, and then I see like slight returns with like the rockabilly set. There was a return of those looks. I'm like, yeah. And then when burlesque came back, and people were like Dita Von Teese, and I'm like, I love her, And I'm always looking at that. But that's one of the periods that I just love being able to play with. And it seems the productions I work on more have been in time periods then something more there's been a few contemporary along the way that have been fun to play with, where I got to use the actor's own hair and transform them a bit. But I did Mamma Mia at Arvada Center for the Arts, which is another venue that I work with here. Great venue under the helm of Philip Sneed. And working with costume designers there that have been great, Claire Henkel and Janice Benning, who's also down at DU. We did Mamma Mia, which of course is a modern piece, and got to do, long and layers and beach wavy, and just be able to style it out with a flat iron, and not have to do, all the setting that we normally do, so it was fun to create something a little more contemporary for something like that, especially a musical where everybody's moving. Moving. And we do those things when we work between the different worlds, with wigs and hair pieces, between what's going to happen with it in a play or what's going to happen in a musical. And then comes the world of dance. And this from working with Houston Ballet. They're moving all over the place, doing things you would not believe that they do with their bodies when you're watching them backstage and they're warming up. And they're tiny. I mean, they're this big, and then all of a sudden, boom, these muscles start popping out all over the place, and they're stretching in positions. I'm like, oh my God, I don't know. Your body must be made of rubber. But those pieces are on there through all of it, and they better not fall off.
Well, I always joked with the acrobats in Ka at Cirque, because at the ballet we would have to pin their wigs on, and they want blood. Like, they want to know that wig is not coming off, because they have spins and turns and leaps and all of these things happening. And so we would do like lock pins, pull them in, turn it, and then do it. And they would say, oh, make sure my wig is on really good at Ka. And I'm like, okay. And so I would do a lock pin, and they're like, ow, no. And I'm like, you said you don't want this to come off. And they're like, oh my God, Megan.
Staple gun. Yeah.
I was like, well, it's not moving. And they were like, I can't even see.
Yeah.
It's a whole, and they're going on stage and spinning and on apparatusi that are, moving and stuff, but they didn't feel they needed it on as tight as the ballet dancers. But it's so true. They're all different animals. Yeah,
it's just learning the different modes of production. Opera, there's a lot of standing and sing. I mean, there can be, the choreography bits pending what's happening in the story, but there's just a lot of that aria delivery involved. But they're profusely sweating. So you've got a sweaty piece you've got to reset. We did Cyrano one year. So, there was the series of noses. And Kevin Copenhaver designed those. Who's now at DU on a pandemic leave, I would say, from Denver Center. When Denver Center returns, I'm sure he will return. Incredible costume crafts and costume designer. But he did all of the noses, and we had to have noses for noses for every show. Of course, they were made out of gelatin, so they were very flesh-like, very realistic. And I saved them all. I had like literally a bag, huge Ziploc bag of all these noses. It looked like something from CSI. Yeah, all these noses that I had saved. But when you find out things, when you have an actor that's really sweaty, certain types of adhesives will break down. So it's always finding the right adhesive. Of course, the ones they have out now are amazing, but even back then, you got this or you got this. It's Prosate or Spirit Gum. It's finding out which one is going to work. Plus there was the wig and the makeup over it and the costuming, and the actor was a big guy, Bill Chris, big guy, very sweaty. So at the end of every play, Cyrano's wig was it was a sweaty rag. So it literally had to be reset
Every time.
for every show. And then when you're doing those period pieces like the 20s and 30s, where you've got all these very tight finger waves and bobs coming in, and of course they all wore hats. So one smash with a hat and the waves are gone. So in between every show and every night at the end of the shows, you're retaping all those waves, and it's work, but it's just like the most creative world. And everything's live. So you're doing it right there. You can't go off camera to fix something or, cut and we're going to do this. It's live, and it's got, it's well rehearsed, well-oiled machine, and it's got to go out there every night.
Now, when you are teaching your high school students, because they can go many different paths, right? They can go into just kind of straight beauty. They can go into salon. They can go into film or television. They could go into theater. There's so many different options, right? We're chatting about shows, and people listening might be like, gosh, there's a lot of like plays and things that they're discussing that I've never heard of that one. Or my question is, if you are teaching your high school students about all of their options and they are interested in theater, but are not so sure they want to go to theater school, do you recommend that they kind of read the basic staples and get familiar with plays and things, so they have, because it can feel very overwhelming, I think, when you get into people that live in that world and they start talking about things, and you come in as a baby and you're like, I don't know anything that you're talking about.
Oh yeah.
How do you handle that with the high school students?
Well, luckily, one of the other benefits of teaching in a public high school, LA is embedded in our programs. In our tech programs, LA is embedded. They're earning high school English credit within our tech programs. So we're able to embed the English as it would pertain to our industry. So with experiential extended learning, and I'm huge on that, getting out of the four walls and getting into the real.
Yeah.
I write grants every year, and then I pray to the grant gods that I get the grants. And they've shined on me, so I've been lucky so far. Nice. I take them to see a production, and to cross over into LA, we look at the production that we are seeing. We look at the time period. We look at the context of the play and what's happening in the story. We look at the time period in terms of how they wore their hair, how they dressed, How does that filter into the play? So I'm able to bridge all that. But for those students also that are wanting to enter into that aspect of the entertainment industry, theater, opera, dance, even film, television, because you're telling a story, you got to know it. So you better read that script. You have to read that script, and working with the costume designers to help create that character.
Yeah,
it's huge. You've got to, or you will struggle. Because you're not going to understand how it all needs to come together as a cohesive unit. That wig does not look right because that wig is not right for that character. That character would not wear their hair that way. So now it needs to be redone. You've really got to understand that context. So reading the script and knowing the period.
Yeah. It's just so interesting. Going into grad school, I was like, I'm going to get my graduate degree. So if I ever want to teach, I can teach on a college level, because I don't ever want to teach high school. But I have to say, my feelings on that are slightly changed now, being in more of an educator role, more full-time, and having discussions with very well-intentioned young people who are super clear on the path that they want to take. And it's like dealing with a whole different human being that just happens to be young, that knows what they want to do. And I think that all of this comes together in teaching people that it's not just one person creating a show. It's like you said, it's the collaboration of it is so important, and understanding your role in that collaboration. And I'm just so happy that you're there and so passionate about it and teaching all of these young people so many amazing things.
I love it. I never thought that I would be teaching what I do. And then after years in teaching it in the post-secondary level, I never thought that I would be teaching in the secondary public school level. But it has been great. I've had people ask me, when are you going to retire? When are you going to retire? Are you retire? No. I will be doing what I do for as long as I can do it. I just, it's like, what else would I do? This has been my life. I live it and I love it. I love my work, and I will just continue to educate and create for as long as I can. It's just how, it's like breathing. It's how I breathe. It's how I relate to the world, basically, is through my work. Thankful for all of my students. They inspire me and motivate me every day, and keep me on my toes. And so thankful for productions when they fall into my lap. And with the light coming, with pandemic, the light is coming now.
It is.
Things will start to open up. And I've had people ask that question, well, do you think, is this the end of, live? Are we not going to, is this not going to, no, it's going to come back, A, because we want it to, and B, because they're missing it. All the people that normally go to any type of live performance, they're missing it terribly. Again, it's that human condition, that human connection. And we've realized from the pandemic, how much we really need each other. We really do. And when you go to experience, live performance, it's a way of connecting.
Yeah. So and theater has been around since the beginning, time immemorial.
Yeah.
And I think that going and sharing stories and watching people tell stories that might reflect your life or give you insight into life, and it's the drinks before and the drinks after, and chatting with people you haven't seen in the lobby and sitting next to them, and going to the have the concession. It's all of it.
Yeah.
That connection is so important, and I tell people the same thing. It will be back. We're on pause for a minute,
right.
And most of the artists that I talk to that are my friends and that aren't working, they are taking this time because we're all, slightly workaholics. And so to have a break has been nice. And then they also are learning new skills or honing skills, in this time. So it's been fruitful for most people, I think.
We are in performing arts. We're used to the feast and the famine. We're used to it. Beyond pandemic, we were used to that. So we'll do what we have to do to survive those feast or famine times. And this was a big famine, but the feast time is coming. So I always say to people, get ready, have your stuff ready, because we will be diving back in.
Yeah, we will. And I cannot wait.
Yeah. Oh, I hear you, feel you. Absolutely.
Before we go, because it's already been almost an hour, which is crazy. I mean, this has just been so lovely to sit and chat with you for a little bit. Is there any kind of motto or thing that you find yourself coming back to on the daily or on the weekly to keep you inspired or motivated?
Mm-hmm. Claude Monet said, "Creativity takes courage." And it does. To put the work out there and not know how it's going to be received. Photo shoot, live production, in the salon, it's always a very subjective thing. So creativity takes courage, but you must continue to create. You must. It is how we motivate and inspire each other. And we have to continue to do that. We must.
Yes, I absolutely could not agree more. That's just perfectly put. Thank you so much, Richard, for joining.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
For those of you that are listening, you can definitely check this out in podcast form if you can't watch our beautiful faces on your screen on Apple and Spotify and Google. And follow Behind the Biz for more fun interviews. I think I might circle back with you in the summer and kind of see how your spring semester went. I'm super interested.
There will be a photo shoot, I am happy to say. There will be a photo shoot, and there might be something down at DU with the theater department down there, possibly Lonesome West, that trilogy of Irish plays.
Yeah.
Which that one takes place late 70s, early 80s. So I envision a mullet coming, which mullets are back. So, hey, let's ride with that, So, and maybe even a perm. So we'll see what happens. We'll see what transpires.
Oh, yes. Well, stay tuned. We'll schedule that up for the summertime, and we'll maybe have a little cabana and stuff, and we'll chat.
Fun.
All right. Thank you for joining us, everybody. Until next time, stay safe and stay creative. Thank you for joining us today on Behind the Biz, Conversations with Artists in Entertainment. You can also check out this episode on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google Podcasts. See you next time.